At my daughter's wedding, her groom shoved my face into the cake and crowed, "Go ahead, try the dessert." Heat flared in my chest as frosting slid down my chin. My first thought was my diabetes. Then a guest pointed at me and blurted, "He's a billionaire." The groom's smug look fell away. His skin went chalky. He'd miscalculated, and there would be a price. Before we go on, please subscribe and tell us where you're listening in the comments. "Of course we understand your financial constraints," Mark Walker said, cutting across my sentence about potential wedding venues like a letter opener through thin paper. The crystal chandelier above our table seemed to dim. Conversations around us carried on, but our table slipped into the particular silence that follows a social execution. Linda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Blake hid a smirk behind his wine glass. Lauren's cheeks flushed a deep red. I'd been describing how lovely outdoor ceremonies could be, mentioning a city park pavilion I'd seen. Simple, elegant, apparently too simple for the Walkers. "Dad makes the most of what we have," Lauren said quickly, her voice pitched higher than usual. "He's always been resourceful." "Resourceful?" Mark sampled the word like a pricey Cabernet. "That's one way to phrase it." The waiter glided up with practiced invisibility to refill our water glasses. I watched the crystal catch and scatter light and wondered how much this dinner cost per minute. The menu had no prices, never a good sign. I'd ordered salmon. Everyone else chose aged steaks that probably cost more than most folks' weekly groceries. "Don't stress about wedding costs," Linda said, her smile as sharp as her diamond studs. "We completely understand your situation." My situation? As if poverty were a diagnosis requiring sympathy. Blake leaned back, expensive fabric stretching across his chest. "We've got connections with the best spots in Newport. Harborview Hall in particular. Maybe you haven't heard of it?" "I haven't," I admitted. $50,000 just for the room," he said casually, watching my face. "But don't worry about chipping in, Tom. We've got this covered." The gift box in my jacket pocket felt heavier. Inside sat a vintage locket I'd found at an estate sale. Genuine Victorian silver, space for 2 photos, beautiful, meaningful, and exactly $37. Suddenly it felt like pocket change at a luxury car lot. Lauren touched my arm. "Dad, you don't have to." "I always provide for my family," I said softly. Mark's laugh was dry. "Naturally, just in your own way." Dessert arrived on plates that could have fed a small village. Gold-leaf chocolate constructions looked more like art than food. I thought of my kitchen table back home, scarred wood where Lauren had done homework for 12 years, where we'd celebrated her college acceptance with a grocery store cake. "We're planning quite the bachelor party," Blake announced. "Private yacht, obviously. You're welcome to join, if you can get time off work." Time off work. I hadn't needed to ask for time off in 15 years. Linda dabbed her lips with a napkin worth more than my shirt. "Tom, remind me, what is it you do again?" "Financial planning." True enough, if incomplete. "How lovely. Small accounts, I suppose." The check arrived in a leather folder. Mark didn't even glance at the total before sliding in his black card. The waiter's grateful nod suggested a tip larger than my monthly grocery budget. Outside, valets ferried cars to the curb. The Walker's Mercedes gleamed under the streetlights like a predator. My Honda Accord looked like it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. "See you soon," Mark called through his open window. "We'll handle the real planning." I helped Lauren into the passenger seat, her silence stretching between us like a bridge. I wasn't sure either of us could cross. The highway unspooled ahead, headlights sweeping our faces in steady intervals. Lauren fidgeted with her purse strap, the leather squeaking in the quiet. "The restaurant was beautiful," she said finally. "Those chandeliers must have cost a fortune." I tightened my grip on the wheel. Exit signs flashed by. 20 minutes to home. 20 minutes to decide whether to let tonight's humiliation sit unchallenged. "Lauren," I said, rougher than I meant, "we need to talk about Evan." Her posture shifted. "What about him?" "The way he talked tonight. His family's attitude toward what? Toward you." She turned in her seat. Dad, they have money. They don't mean anything by it. A truck passed, headlights flooding the car for a beat. In that instant, I saw my daughter clearly, defending a man who'd let his father belittle me, who'd smiled while it happened. Character doesn't change with a bank balance, I said. Tonight showed me who they are. You barely know them. I know enough. I've watched how Evan treats service workers, how he talks about people he thinks are beneath him. Tonight, that included me. Lauren's laugh was sharp. You're being paranoid, and honestly, a little controlling. The word hit harder than Mark's condescension. I'm not trying to control you, I said carefully. I'm trying to protect you from a mistake that could cost you decades of happiness. A mistake? Her voice rose. My engagement is a mistake? Your engagement to him might be. Pull over. What? I said pull over, now. I glanced at her face, lit by the dash. Fury and hurt warred there. This wasn't the talk I'd planned. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Lauren, let's just... Pull over, Dad, I signaled to the shoulder. Before we fully stopped, she was unbuckling. You don't understand anything, she said, grabbing her bag. You don't understand Evan. You don't understand his family. And you definitely don't understand what I need. Sweetheart, please. What I need is support from my father, not judgment. I need someone who trusts me to make my own choices. She opened the door. Cool night air rushed in, smelling of exhaust and distant rain. Where are you going? Anywhere but here. She stepped out, then leaned back down. I'll call Evan to get me. At least he doesn't think I'm too stupid to choose my own life. The door slammed. I watched her walk toward a gas station, heels tapping on asphalt. My phone buzzed. Already texting him probably. Already choosing him over me. I waited until she was inside the fluorescent glow of the convenience store, until I knew she was safe. Then I merged back onto the highway, alone with the radio and the weight of what I'd just lost. The empty passenger seat echoed with her absence. When I turned into my driveway in Stamford, the modest two-story looked smaller than usual. The porch light cast familiar shadows across the garden where Lauren had helped me plant tomatoes every spring since she was 8. A week earlier, everything had been different. A week earlier, I'd sat at this same kitchen table, coffee steaming beside the financial section. April 22nd had started like any other Tuesday. Quiet, predictable, content. The house smelled of French roast and the faint lavender soap Lauren liked when she visited. My phone rang at exactly 8:47 a.m. Dad! Her voice bubbled through the speaker. I have news! I set down my coffee, smiling at her excitement. Good news, I hope. The best! Evan proposed. Her joy was infectious. Whatever reservations I'd had about her boyfriend faded beneath her happiness. She deserved love, someone who cherished her. Tell me everything, I said, leaning back. It was perfect. He took me to the Boston Public Garden, to that spot by the lagoon where we had our first date. Dropped to one knee right there, joggers and dog walkers everywhere. The ring is gorgeous, princess cut, catches the light like crazy. I pictured it, my girl glowing, strangers clapping. The image warmed me despite my doubts. I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. There's an engagement dinner next week. You'll meet his parents for real. They're wonderful, Dad. His father built their company from nothing. He'll have tons to talk about with you. That's when I made the decision that led to tonight's disaster. Lauren, before we meet them, I need a favor. Anything. I stood and paced to the window, looking out at my neighbor's ordinary lawn. I'd like to keep my finances private, let them think I'm just a regular working guy. Silence. When she spoke, confusion colored her voice. Why would you do that? Because I want to see who they really are. Money changes how people behave. If they think I'm wealthy, they'll perform. If they think I'm ordinary, they'll treat me honestly. And if that treatment is bad, we'll know exactly who we're dealing with. She was quiet a long moment. Dad, that's a little manipulative, isn't it? It's practical. Real character shows when people think there's nothing to gain from kindness. Now, sitting in my driveway with the confrontation still raw, I wondered if I'd been wise or just stubborn. My modest home sat quietly around me. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nothing special. The portfolio statements in my desk told a different story, but those numbers had never mattered much. In the hall, family photos, Lauren at graduation, Lauren at Christmas morning with sensibly priced gifts, Lauren laughing at one of my bad jokes, her face bright with uncomplicated love. I climbed the stairs to my room, each step heavier than the last. Tomorrow would likely begin a long silence between us. I'd asked her to hide my wealth and risked losing the only thing that mattered. The irony wasn't lost on me. Trying to protect her from people who worshipped money, I'd pushed her straight into their arms. In the familiar quiet, simplicity felt heavier somehow. Every modest piece of furniture, every careful choice whispered of decisions I'd made long ago, before Lauren, before the money that changed everything except how I chose to live. The living room hadn't changed in 15 years. Same comfortable couch, same wooden coffee table with its constellation of ring stains from 1,000 evenings reading together. The only expensive things were hidden, statements locked in my desk, the emergency fund that could buy the whole block. I settled into my reading chair, the one Lauren helped me pick out at a second-hand store when she was 16. "Dad, this one's perfect," she'd said, running her fingers over the worn leather. "It looks like it has stories." Stories, like the one I never told her about 1995. I was 28, living in a studio in Seattle that barely qualified as housing. A Murphy bed folded down to cover half the floor. My kitchen was a hot plate and a mini fridge that hummed like a dying insect. Every morning I walked a dozen blocks to the bookkeeping firm rather than spend $2 on the bus. My savings account held exactly $5,127. I knew because I checked it obsessively, the way some people check their pulse. 5,000 represented 2 years of living like a monk, pasta and canned vegetables, the same 3 shirts on rotation. The meeting happened on a Tuesday. I was walking back from lunch, a day-old bagel, when 2 young guys approached me outside the coffee shop where I sometimes allowed myself 1 small cup. "Excuse me," the taller asked. "Are you an accountant?" They looked barely old enough to vote. The shorter clutched a battered laptop like a life preserver. "I work in accounting," I said carefully. "We need someone to look at our numbers," the tall one said. "Someone smart, someone who understands money." They laid out their idea over terrible coffee in my building's lobby, a software platform to change how people shared information. The internet was still young then, dial-up and blocky websites. Their vision felt both impossible and inevitable. "We need seed money," the short one said, hands shaking. "Nothing huge. 5,000 would get us space, better equipment, maybe a few real meals." 5,000, my entire safety net. I should have said no, should have explained that losing it meant moving back to my parents' place in Ohio, admitting defeat. Instead, I asked questions. Market research, revenue projections, competition. They had answers. Good ones. More importantly, they had something I recognized from my own mirror. Hunger, not for luxury, but to build something meaningful. "If I invest," I said slowly, "I want 10% equity." Deal. No hesitation, no lawyer, just a handshake in a lobby that smelled like industrial carpet and old dreams. 6 months later, they signed their first major client. 18 months after that, a tech giant bought them for $42 million. My 5,000 became $4.2 million overnight. I sat in my unchanged living room later, remembering that call. The moment everything shifted. The realization that money was just a tool, not the destination. I'd seen what wealth did to people in my line of work, lottery winners and heirs who unraveled. Money didn't create character. It exposed it. That's why I kept life simple. Why I raised Lauren to value work over wealth, character over capital. why I'd asked her to keep my finances quiet with the Walkers. The photo on my end table showed Lauren at college graduation, beaming beside me outside a modest restaurant where we'd celebrated. She had no idea her education came from tech stock dividends, no idea her father could have bought her anything she wanted. Tomorrow, I realized, I'd have to decide whether that principle was worth losing her. Morning light didn't bring clarity. I woke hoping last night had been a bad dream, that my daughter hadn't chosen Evan over me in a gas station lot. But my phone held no missed calls, no apologies, no reset. Day one felt manageable. Lauren needed space. I stuck to routine. Coffee at 6:30, paper at 7, market reports at 8. Every buzz of my phone spiked hope. Usually it was just emails about portfolios that suddenly felt meaningless. By day 3, I began leaving careful voicemails. "Hi, sweetheart, it's Dad. I love you. Call when you're ready." Short, respectful, not pushy. Day 7, longer messages. "Lauren, I've been thinking. I could have said things better. You know I want you happy, right? That's all I've ever wanted." Week 2, I discovered gardening. Lauren always loved my vegetable patch. We'd planted tomatoes together every spring since she was 8. Now I worked the soil alone, pulling weeds that multiplied overnight. The physical labor quieted the urge to call. The tomato starts I'd bought weeks earlier sat in their plastic trays, too late to plant them now without her. The tradition felt incomplete, like trying to clap with one hand. Week 3, desperation dressed up as productivity. I organized 20 years of photos, finding hundreds of Lauren at every age, birthday parties, school plays, graduation. In every photo, she looked at me with complete trust. When had that changed? My voicemails grew longer, more raw. "I keep thinking about when you were 12 and broke Mrs. Parker's window with that baseball. You were terrified to tell me, but when you did, we went together to apologize and pay for the repair. Remember what I said? Mistakes don't define us. How we handle them does. I think I made a mistake with Evan. Hi, Dos, can we handle it together?" The wedding invitation never came. Day 25, I drove past Lauren's building, not stopping, not stalking, just needing to know she existed. Her car sat in its usual space. It proved nothing but geography. Day 28 brought panic. Venues, caterers, photographers, everything needed final calls. Was I cut out completely? Would I watch my only child marry a man I didn't trust through strangers' posts? "Lauren, it's Dad again. I know I've called a lot this week. Tomorrow's June 1st. I assume that's still the date. I understand if you don't want me there, but I need to know. Please tell me you're okay." My voice cracked on that one. 30 days of silence had worn down my composure like water on stone. Day 30, I made pasta for one, the kind Lauren and I used to cook on Sunday nights. The table felt enormous with one place setting, the empty chair across from me a constant reminder of what my stubbornness had cost. 6:45 p.m. Tomorrow, somewhere in Newport, my daughter would marry Evan Walker. I'd likely watch it happen on a screen, if anyone bothered to tag me. The phone rang. My fork clattered against the plate. After a month of silence, unexpected calls mean bad news. ERs, accidents, every parent's worst fears. Lauren lit the screen. My hands shook as I swiped. "Hello? Dad?" Her voice was smaller than I remembered, nervous. "Hi." "Hi?" I stood so fast my chair scraped. "Are you okay? Is everything—" "I'm fine. I'm calling because tomorrow is—" She paused. I heard traffic, Evan's voice muffled in the background. "The wedding is tomorrow." "I know." The words came out rough. I cleared my throat. "I wasn't sure if—" "I want you there." Relief hit like a physical blow. I leaned against the wall, dizzy. "Thank you. I was hoping. But there are conditions." Of course there were. Nothing was easy anymore. "I'm listening." "You can't say anything negative about Evan. No faces, no comments, none of that thing you do when you disapprove." "What thing?" "You know, the eyebrow. And that lip press at dinner." I reached for my eyebrow instinctively. I don't... Promise me, Dad, it's my day. It needs to be perfect. Perfect. For her, I could manage it, or at least the performance of it. I promise, no comments, no faces, no disapproval. I'll be the model father of the bride. She exhaled audibly. Good. Ceremonies at 4. Harborview Hall in Newport. I'll text the address. Cocktails at 5, dinner at 7. What should I wear? Navy suit is fine, nothing too formal. She stopped herself. The Walkers already think what? Nothing. Navy is perfect. We both knew she'd been about to say the Walkers already thought I couldn't afford anything formal. Probably true from their point of view. Lauren, about that night in the car. Dad, don't. Let's just start fresh tomorrow, okay? Clean slate. Clean slate. As if 30 days could be wiped away with polite intentions. I'd take what I could get. Clean slate, I said. I love you. I love you too, Dad. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, barely believing the conversation had happened. 30 days of agony ended with a 5-minute call that changed everything. My dinner went cold. Appetite didn't return. Upstairs, I took out my navy suit, the one from the disastrous dinner. Tomorrow it would serve a different purpose. Tomorrow I'd walk my daughter down the aisle to marry a man I didn't trust. I'd smile and shake hands with people who'd spent an evening mocking my make-believe poverty. I'd pretend everything was perfect while she tied herself to a family that measured worth in dollars. But I'd be there. After a month wondering if I'd lost her, I'd be there. Sometimes that had to be enough. Sunlight slipped through my blinds at exactly 6:30, the same time I'd risen for 3 decades. Today felt different. Today I'd see my daughter. The suit hung on the closet door, pressed and ready. Best, but not flashy. Conservative tie, polished shoes, everything Lauren asked. Nothing the Walkers could accuse of trying too hard. Breakfast took planning. My monitor showed normal numbers, but wedding stress could swing them. I took my insulin, ate steel-cut oats, double-checked the meter. A diabetic emergency at my daughter's wedding wasn't on the agenda. The forecast promised perfection. 72 degrees, light breeze, no rain. The sort of day Lauren had dreamed of since childhood, when she staged backyard weddings for her dolls. Coffee steadied my hands. I'd caught 3 hours of real sleep, the first in weeks. Hope is a powerful sedative. By 8 I was dressed, checking my reflection, modest but respectable. Clean shave, careful grooming, a hint of the cologne Lauren gave me last Christmas. I looked exactly as expected, a working man who'd done his best. You can do this, I told the mirror. No comments, no faces, perfect behavior. The gift took thought. Too expensive would raise questions. Too cheap would embarrass Lauren. I settled on a crystal vase from the local shop, elegant but modest. $68 felt appropriately thoughtful. The owner wrapped it beautifully, white ribbon and a small card. For the happy couple, I wrote, wishing you joy, love, and understanding. Understanding. If only they knew how much I already understood. Texts trickled in from friends and neighbors wishing Lauren well. People who'd watched her grow up, her first steps in this hallway. They had no idea today might be the last time I'd walk her anywhere. The drive to Newport would take 2 hours on a Saturday. Ceremony at 4 meant leaving by noon for parking and photos. Time for one last check. Insulin pen in my jacket, glucose tablets in my pocket, gift receipt in my wallet, phone fully charged, everything a responsible father might need. I looked around my simple home one last time. If today went sideways, if I couldn't keep my promise, tomorrow might bring another month of silence or worse. But today held possibility, too. Maybe Evan would surprise me. Maybe joy would sand down the sharp edges. Maybe Lauren would find happiness despite my doubts. I picked up the wrapped gift and my keys. Time to find out which version of the day would show up. The Accord started on the first turn. I adjusted the mirror, took one last glance at myself, and backed out. Newport waited, along with whatever was coming. Harborview Hall rose from manicured lawns like something from a magazine. Bentleys and Mercedes lined the circular drive, chrome winking in the sun. My Honda looked like a lost delivery car among thoroughbreds. A valet approached with professional surprise. "Sir, are you here for the Walker-Hayes wedding?" "I'm the bride's father." His expression shifted to sympathy mixed with respect. "Of course, sir. Right this way." The entrance hall sparkled with chandeliers worth more than most houses. Floral arrangements towered like small trees, every bloom perfect, every stem precise. The air smelled of expensive perfume and imported lilies. "Tom," Linda's voice carried across the marble like a ship's horn. "Everyone, this is Lauren's father." 24 well-dressed guests turned to stare. Their eyes took inventory. Modest suit, department store shoes, gift clearly not from Tiffany. Polite smiles formed, the kind reserved for charity cases. "How wonderful you could make it," Mark materialized beside his wife. "I know the drive from, where is it you live? Stamford, right? Quite the trip in that little car." The photographer appeared, cameras draped around his neck. "Family photos in 5 minutes?" "Immediate family only," Linda clarified quickly. "Tom, perhaps you could wait over there?" Over there meant a corner by the coat check, away from the important people. I watched the Walkers pose with Lauren, their designer outfits coordinated like a campaign. Evan's groomsmen joined, Harvard ties and inherited confidence. A waiter offered champagne from a silver tray. "Dom Perignon P2, he announced. "Exceptional vintage." "My goodness," a guest whispered. "That's $300 a bottle." "Only the best for our son," Mark declared, loud enough for the room. "Of course, not everyone appreciates fine champagne." He looked straight at me. The seating chart delivered another neat insult. Front rows gleamed with Walker clients and society friends. I was directed to row 7, behind elderly relatives and plus ones, the father of the bride parked with strangers. "Beautiful location," I said to the woman beside me. "Oh yes," she whispered. 50,000 just for the rental. Thank goodness the Walkers could do it properly. I heard the bride's family," she trailed off. "Has very modest means," I finished. "Yes, I'm so sorry." Evan's best man made rounds with cigars. "Cuban," he crowed, "for special occasions." The humidor bypassed my row entirely. During cocktails, I caught 30 seconds with Lauren. She was radiant in silk and pearls, happiness glowing beneath careful makeup. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you for coming, Dad. I know this isn't easy." "It's your day. That's what matters." She squeezed my hand. "Evan's family means well. They're just particular about traditions." Particular, like cutting me from photos and seating me with strangers. "I'm fine," I said. "Go enjoy your reception." Dinner arrived with theater. Waiters moved in formation, plates like art. 5 courses, each more elaborate than most entrees. The wine pairings alone probably cost more than my grocery budget. From my distant table, I watched the head table buzz. Evan gestured big, making his groomsmen laugh. Now and then, he glanced my way with the same smirk I remembered. The dessert station rose like a sugar cathedral. A 5-tier cake, chocolate sculptures, artisanal pastries, guests gathered, phones out. I stayed seated, observing from afar, as always. When I finally approached, I did it carefully. The chocolate fountain murmured. Pastries sparkled with gold leaf, nothing designed for someone with diabetes. A waiter noticed my hesitation. "Can I help you choose, sir?" "Any sugar-free options? I'm diabetic." "Of course. We have fresh fruit, a sugar-free chocolate mousse, and almond cookies made with stevia." "Simple request, medical necessity, nothing shameful about managing your health." "That sounds perfect. The fruit, please." Conversations hummed behind me. Guests compared vacation homes and stock portfolios, topics I could afford but avoided. What's that about diabetic options? Evan's voice sliced through the room like a dull saw through silk. He stepped up, champagne loose in his grip. I was asking about sugar-free. Sugar-free? His laugh was too loud, pulling eyes toward us. Let me guess. You can't afford proper medical care either? Conversations paused. Heads turned. The elegant atmosphere tilted toward spectacle. I manage my condition just fine. Sure, free clinics and discount meds? Evan's voice carried now, performing for an audience. But hey, at least you made it to the wedding, right? Even if you can't afford dessert. Evan, Lauren's voice sliced in behind us. What's going on? Just helping your dad understand dessert, he said, that smirk spreading. Apparently beggars can be choosers when it comes to cake. Beggars. The word hung like a bad smell. 50 guests went silent. Waiters froze. Even the fountain seemed to quiet. That's enough, Lauren snapped. Is it? Evan stepped closer, drunk courage in his eyes. Because I'm tired of pretending this is fine. Tired of your deadbeat father embarrassing our family. He's not embarrassing anyone. Look at him. Evan flung a hand at my modest suit, careful posture, mere presence among their excess. Look at this pathetic situation. Then his hands moved, fast, decisive, drunk but intentional. My face hit the cake with the sound of expensive fabric tearing. Frosting filled my eyes, nose, mouth. 5 tiers of architectural sugar collapsed, vanilla and chocolate mixing with shock and humiliation. Gasps, shrieks, nervous laughter erupted. A flashbulb popped. A woman screamed. Chairs scraped marble as people stood for a better look. I straightened slowly, cake dripping from my hair, frosting sliding down my cheeks. It tasted excellent. Expensive vanilla, real butter, the kind of cake I could afford but wouldn't buy. Through sugary lashes, I saw faces, shocked, amused, disgusted. Lauren's horrified. What did you do? She whispered. Evan grinned, pleased with himself, unaware he'd just made the worst mistake of his pampered life. Lauren's slap cracked like a gunshot. Red bloomed on his cheek as he stumbled, shock replacing his drunken smirk. How dare you? Her voice carried across the marble. How dare you lay a hand on my father? Phones were already recording what would become the season's social scandal. Lauren, calm down, Evan stammered, touching his face. It was just what? Assault? Public humiliation of the man who raised me? A voice boomed from table 12, steady and commanding. Enough! Peter Grant rose, silver hair catching chandelier light. At 65, he owned the room without trying. The chatter died as he approached our wrecked dessert altar. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter announced, his voice carrying boardroom weight, allow me to introduce Tom Reed. Some of you may recognize him as an early backer of Nexora Systems. Ripples of surprise passed through the crowd. Postures straightened. Tom, Peter continued, meeting my eyes through the frosting, is one of America's most successful private investors. He took early stakes in companies that reshaped the digital world. Current net worth, well north of $1 billion. Whispers exploded. Heads snapped from me to Evan to the walkers. That's Tom Reed? A woman near table 8 gasped. The Nexora Tom Reed? I thought I knew that face, someone else said. His fund is legendary. Isn't he the guy who turned $5,000 into $4 million in 2 years? I brushed crumbs from my jacket and nodded to Peter. Recognition spread like wildfire. Business connections, investment lore, whispered confirmations that made the Walker's millions look like lunch money. Evan's face went from red to white to green. Behind him, Mark and Linda froze, expressions cycling through confusion, recognition, and dread. But he drives a Honda, Linda whispered to no one. He lives in Stamford, Mark added weakly. Exactly, Peter said with a thin smile. Tom understands what your family clearly doesn't. Money doesn't define character. Character shows in how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer. Guests pressed closer, fascinated. Some looked ashamed for watching the spectacle. Others looked thrilled to witness a social car crash. Evan opened and closed his mouth without sound, a fish hauled from expensive water. I wiped the last of the cake from my eyes and looked around at faces that had ignored me earlier, now full of sudden respect and embarrassed awe. The walkers moved toward me, panic dawning as their calculations flipped. "Tom, please." Mark reached me first, business instincts kicking in. "This is a terrible misunderstanding." I flicked frosting from my sleeve, keeping the quiet dignity I'd practiced all night. "Misunderstanding?" I asked calmly. "Your son assaulted me in front of 200 witnesses. Which part am I not understanding?" Evan lurched forward, alcohol and fear tangling his steps. "Mr. Reed, sir, I didn't know. I mean, if I'd realized what? That I might be rich?" I shook my head. "So assault is acceptable if the victim is poor?" "No, that's not. I didn't mean—" Evan's words nodded. Sweat beaded despite the AC. Linda slid to his side, damage control mode engaged. "Tom, surely we can put this behind us. Families clash at weddings. Emotions run high." "Families clash," I repeated, tasting the words. "Is that your name for a month of calculated humiliation? For cutting me from photos? For your son's violence?" "We apologize," Mark said quickly, his tone shifting to negotiation. "Completely, unreservedly. Let's start fresh. Clean slate." The same phrase Lauren had used, but without love, only calculus. "Start fresh," I mused, "now that you know I have money." "Your finances have nothing to do with this," Linda protested, voice a shade too high. Peter laughed once, sharp. "Ma'am, your treatment of Tom had everything to do with money. You mocked a man you thought was poor. Now you want friendship because he's rich." "That's not true," Evan said desperately. "I'd have treated him the same either way." "Really?" I asked quietly. "The way you treated the servers tonight? The valet? Housekeeping?" Evan's mouth worked uselessly. "Your character was perfectly clear," I said, "not because of what you did to a poor man, but because of how you act when you think consequences don't exist." "Please," Mark tried again. "Business aside, personal aside, you're about to be family. We need to work together." Family. The word tasted bitter. "I watched you teach your son that money determines worth, that poverty excuses cruelty, and wealth erases it." I brushed a final crumb from my collar. "You want a restart? Here's mine. I'm leaving." "You can't just walk out," Linda said, desperation cracking her voice. "Think of Lauren. Think of what we could accomplish. Together." "Business opportunities," I said. Even now they were running numbers. "I'm thinking of Lauren. She deserves better than a family that counts love in dollars." Evan grabbed my sleeve as I turned. "Wait, I can change. I can be better." I looked at his hand, then his face. You're 30. This is who you are." The crowd parted as I headed for the doors, whispers trailing me. Behind me, the walkers' voices rose, pleading, bargaining, but their words were empty. They'd shown me who they were when they thought it didn't matter. Evening air washed over me like absolution as I stepped outside Harborview Hall. Behind me, muffled voices marked the continuing disaster. Ahead, the parking lot stretched toward my modest Accord, a sanctuary among the idling luxury sedans. Footsteps pounded behind me, fast on marble, then concrete. "Dad, wait!" I turned to see Lauren bunching up her dress, designer silk skimming the asphalt as she ran. Her perfect hair had come loose, tears streaked her makeup. "Sweetheart, go back inside," I said softly. "It's your wedding." "No," she stopped in front of me, breathless. "It's not. Not anymore." We stood there in the golden hour, father and daughter divided by months of hurt. Her gown cost more than many cars. My suit was stained with cake that cost more than most dinners. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You were right. About everything. About Evan, about his family, about what money does to people." "I'm sorry too," I said. "I should have told you the truth from the start." "Why didn't you?" I glanced toward the ocean beyond the manicured lawn. "Because I wanted you to be loved for who you are, not what I have. I wanted your relationships to be real. Like ours? The question hung between us like a bridge we weren't sure would hold. Our relationship is real, I said. It survived lean years, windfalls, fights, silence. It survived tonight. Lauren took my hand. I spent 2 months angry that you didn't trust my judgment. But you saw what I couldn't, or wouldn't. Sometimes being right doesn't feel like winning. She laughed once, hiccuping around a sob. I just left my own reception to chase my dad across a parking lot in a $20,000 dress. $20,000? I raised an eyebrow. For that price, it should come with better running shoes. Her laugh came out real this time. Take me home, Dad. What about your reception? Your guests? What about them? Let Evan explain why the bride left. Let them manage their own catastrophe. I looked at my daughter in her extravagant dress, standing beside my 10-year-old Accord. The symbolism didn't need explaining. You're sure? I've never been more sure. I opened the passenger door, and she gathered silk into the modest interior. As I rounded the hood, guests began filing out, scanning for the missing bride. Where to? I asked, turning the key. Home, she said simply. Your home, our home. We drove back through familiar routes, past the places where I'd raised her, where we built a life on values, not valuations. Late afternoon light turned even modest neighborhoods into something golden. I get it now, Lauren said as we crossed the bridge toward Stamford. Why you live the way you do, why you never flaunted the money. Money's a tool, I said, not your identity, not a measure of worth, just a tool to build the life you want. What life do you want? I asked as I eased into the driveway and looked at the simple house where I'd tried to raise her strong, independent kind. This one, I said. Exactly this one. We sat in the car for a moment, watching the sun slip behind the roofs. Simple houses, tidy lawns, relationships built on character instead of capital. Come on, I said at last. I'll put on coffee and we'll figure out what's next. Together we walked to the door of the little house that had always been rich in everything that mattered. If you like this story, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.